Hello there. Welcome back to my channel. How's everybody doing? I hope you're all doing great. So tonight I'm going to share 3 haunted doll stories with you. One of which is actually based on real accounts, so that should be interesting. Now, before we get started, I just want to ask you to go ahead and click the like and subscribe buttons for me. That way YouTube knows to continue to put out content just like this. Now, get comfortable, turn the lights down, and let's begin. When Carly Bell moved into her grandmother's old house at the edge of Sycamore Road, she found the doll waiting in the upstairs window. It was a porcelain thing in a faded blue dress with cracked pink cheeks, black curls stitched too tightly to its head, and glass eyes that seemed to gather every bit of light in the room. Carly didn't remember seeing it in any childhood photograph, nor had her grandmother ever mentioned it. Still there it sat, on the sill, facing the street as if it had been expecting her. Entering the house, Carly decided to have a look around. It'd been a long time since she'd stepped inside, and being there conjured up childhood memories that brought a small smile to her face. Heading up to the attic, Carly took notice of some of the old boxes and furniture tucked away up there. She saw the old furnace and figured she'd better get it lit to warm the house before the sun went down. But as she added some pieces of wood and kindling into the furnace, she swore she thought the doll in the window moved. "Just my imagination," she said as she quickly lit the fire and left, closing the door shut behind her. "Just a doll," Carly whispered as she settled in for the night, though the words sounded small in the dusty room. That first night, rain tapped at the windows like fingernails. The old house groaned around her, settling into the dark. Carly slept poorly, waking again and again to the feeling that someone had opened her bedroom door. And each time she looked, the hallway stood empty. It was at 3:17 a.m. that she heard a child laughing downstairs. Carly froze beneath her blankets. The laugh came again, soft and bubbling, followed by the scrape of something being dragged across the floorboards. She reached for her phone, but the screen wouldn't wake. It seemed the house had swallowed the power, the signal, and every brave thought she owned. So mustering up some courage, she took the flashlight from her nightstand and crept downstairs. And to her shock, there in the parlor, the doll sat in the center of the rug. Carly's mouth went dry. She had left it upstairs. She was certain of that. But standing there, unsure if she believed what it was she was seeing, her flashlight beam shook over the doll's face, and she noticed its painted lips had been closed before. Now they were parted in a tiny smile. Then, from somewhere behind the walls, a voice whispered,
"She promised me a body."
That was it. Carly ran back to her room and shut the door behind her, locking it for good measure. That night, she somehow managed to fall back to sleep, and by morning, she convinced herself that it was likely the grief of losing her grandmother that had made her imagine what she saw last night. But for the sake of her sanity, she decided to get rid of it. She carried the doll to the trash bin outside and buried it beneath broken picture frames, yellowed newspapers, and a cracked lampshade. Then, when she was back inside the house, she locked every door, opened every curtain, and told herself daylight had rules that nightmares could not break. Or so she thought, because when noon hit, the doll was back in the upstairs window. How could this be? Carly knew she'd put the doll in the trash bin. She had purposely buried it under other stuff. So how could this be? Then she thought, could there be someone else inside the house right now, playing tricks on her? She wasn't about to let this go, so she went searching the entire house, and when she got to the attic, she sucked in a deep breath and stepped inside. As she looked around the attic, she discovered a loose floorboard and was able to remove it. That's when she found a cedar box tied with a black ribbon, and inside the box lay a bundle of letters written in her grandmother's trembling hand. The earliest letter spoke of a little girl named Elspeth, who had lived next door to her grandmother almost half a century before. It seemed the girl was sickly and had formed an attachment to Carly's grandmother. But as Carly read on, the later letters grew stranger. Words like, "She will not stay buried. The doll walks when I sleep. I promised only to keep her company. I never promised blood." The final letter was dated the night before Carly's grandmother died. "If anyone finds this, do not look into her eyes after midnight. That is how she gets in." Then the floorboards creaked behind Carly, scaring her. Who or what was behind her? Carly didn't want to look but knew she had to, so she turned slowly. And there, the doll stood at the attic door, no higher than her knees, one porcelain hand resting against the frame. Its eyes reflected Carly's face, but not quite correctly. In the doll's gaze, Carly's mouth smiled, though she was not smiling.
Grandmother got old.
The doll said in a child's voice.
You will last longer.
Carly scrambled for the cedar box and found beneath the letters a rusted silver pen. She didn't know why it mattered until the doll screamed. The sound cracked the attic mirror and sent dust pouring from the rafters. Then the doll sprang at her. Thinking quickly and with a trace of hope, Carly drove the pin through the doll's chest. Porcelain split with a sharp, wet crack, and a black mist poured from the break, twisting into the shape of a small girl with hollow eyes and a mouth too wide for her face. The attic went colder than winter.
You promised.
The thing hissed. I didn't, Carly said as she rushed to the furnace. Without hesitation, she threw the doll into the hot furnace and scrambled backwards as the flames rose blue. The mist shrieked, shrinking into the fire until only ash remained. By sunset, the house felt lighter. It seemed the windows cleared and there was a sense of calm. 3 weeks later, Carly sold the house to a young couple with a daughter. And on moving day, the little girl ran upstairs before anyone could stop her. A moment later, she called down,
Mama, can I keep this?
As Carly walked out of the house, leaving it to the new owners, she turned for a last look, and in the upstairs window, beneath a clean patch of sunlight, sat a porcelain doll in a faded blue dress. Its cheeks were cracked, its curls were black. When Carly spotted it, the doll winked. I never believed in haunted objects. Dolls, mirrors, music boxes. I always thought those stories were exaggerated, dramatized, or flat out made up. But what happened at the Briarwood Inn last winter changed my mind forever. I still don't know what the doll wanted. I still don't know why it chose me. And I still don't know how it followed me home. All I know is that room 11 should have never been rented and never be rented again. So I checked into the Briarwood Inn on December 3rd. It was a small roadside motel in northern Nevada, the kind with flickering neon signs and a lobby that smelled faintly of old carpet. I was on a solo road trip and wanted a place to stay for a couple nights. And on a budget, this place fit the bill. The woman at the front desk handed me the key to room 11, but she hesitated before sliding it across the counter. She looked at me weirdly and said, "If anything feels off, call me." I laughed. Off how? She didn't answer. I wish I would have taken that a little more seriously. So, room 11 was small. 1 bed, 1 dresser, 1 nightstand. Everything looked normal except for one thing. It was a porcelain doll sitting in the chair by the window. It was old, a cracked face, wearing a tattered, stained denim dress. It had glass eyes that seemed too shiny for something so dusty, and its head was tilted slightly as if waiting for me to speak. I assumed it was a decoration, a weird choice, but whatever. So feeling a little weirded out by this old doll, I decided to move it to the dresser so I wouldn't feel like it was staring at me all night while I slept. But I woke up at 2:14 a.m. Not because of a noise, but because of a feeling. The room felt wrong. It felt heavy and cold, like someone was standing over me. I sat up slowly, and believe it or not, the doll was on the chair again, facing me. I froze. I knew I'd moved it. I remembered the weight of it in my hands. I remember placing it on that dresser, but there it was, sitting exactly where it had been when I first entered the room. So I got up, grabbed the doll, and put it in the closet. I shut the door firmly and went back to bed. 5 minutes later, I heard a soft thud, then another, then a slow, dragging sound coming from the closet. I laid there, unsure of what I should do, but I can tell you one thing I didn't do was open that closet door. And I can tell you, I don't know how I made it through the night and fell back to sleep, but somehow I did. And the next morning, I asked the front desk woman about that doll. She looked terrified. "You saw it?" she whispered. I nodded. She swallowed hard, and then she told me. "It belonged to a little girl who stayed here in the 80s. She died in that room." Whoa, I thought. "She drowned," the woman continued, "in the bathtub. Her mother said the doll was her favorite thing in the world. When they found her, the doll was sitting on the edge of the tub." That was enough for me. I didn't need to hear any more. I went back to my room knowing that I would be leaving first thing in the morning. That night, I locked the closet door with a chair wedged under the handle and sat on my bed, scrolling through my phone, trying to ignore the cold feeling creeping through the room. And at 11:47 p.m., the closet door creaked. Then, slowly, the chair slid across the floor. Petrified, I froze as I watched the closet door open, showing me the doll standing right there in the doorway. That's right, I said standing, not sitting. It was standing, its head tilted, its glass eyes reflecting the dim lamp light. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Then, the doll, it took one step forward, making a tiny, soft tapping sound on the carpet, then another, and another. And that was it. I ran out of the room and didn't stop until I reached the lobby. Running inside, I knew that front desk woman knew. She had to. She didn't ask me any questions. She didn't even look surprised. She did let me sleep in the lobby that night, or at least try to sleep, because at around 3:02 a.m., the lobby lights began to flicker. Then the air, it grew cold, and I heard a soft tapping coming from the hallway. Oh, no. I stood up slowly, and there it was. The doll was sitting on the floor at the end of the hallway, facing me, its head tilted, its dress wet, its hair dripping, as if it just climbed out of water. The front desk woman whispered, "Don't move." But the doll lifted its arm, its tiny porcelain hand, pointing at me. Then it whispered in this weird, soft, breathy voice, "Come back." Then the lights went out for a second, and when they flickered back on, the doll was gone. I left Briarwood Inn before sunrise. I didn't even look back. I didn't speak to anyone. I just drove straight home. But last week, something happened. I woke up at 2:14 a.m., the same time as the first night, and it felt cold, heavy, and wrong. I sat up slowly, and there was something sitting in the chair across my bedroom. You're not going to believe this, but it was a porcelain doll. Cracked face, denim dress, glassy eyes, head tilted, just sitting there, waiting, just sitting there, watching me and waiting. I never liked ventriloquist dummies. Even as a kid, they made me uneasy. The stiff smiles, the glassy eyes, the way their jaws hung open like they were waiting to speak. But I never feared them, at least not until the night I found one inside the walls of my childhood home. It started when my dad decided to renovate the house. We lived in an old place outside of Bakersfield. One afternoon, while my dad was working on the house, he tore out a section of drywall in the hallway. I heard him gasp as he worked, so I went over to see what was happening, and to my shock, I could see hair behind the wall. So as my dad continued to break down the drywall, it became clear that there was a ventriloquist dummy wedged into a narrow cavity sitting upright, looking directly at us. And aside from the dust on this thing, it looked brand new. My dad laughed nervously. Probably left by the previous owners. So he pulled the dummy out and handed it to me. Not really knowing what to do with it, I ended up putting the dummy on a shelf in my room, but I really didn't like it. I didn't tell my dad. He'd been excited about the renovation and I didn't want to bring him down, so I just went with it. I mean, it was just a stupid dummy after all. That night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a creaking sound, like twisting wood. I opened my eyes and realized the sound was coming from the shelf where the dummy was. So I sat up slowly, and in the dark, I could see the dummy's head turning to face me. I screamed, and within seconds my parents came running into my room. I told them that I thought the dummy was moving. They said I was likely just having a bad dream and went back to bed, leaving me alone with that thing. The next day, I told my dad I didn't want that dummy in my room. He didn't ask why. He just said, okay, and moved it to the living room. And I was relieved, except for when I'd have to pass it, it would be there just sitting on the couch, watching and staring. And every time I would pass, I swear its smile was widening. That night, while I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a voice right outside my bedroom door. It was a whiny sort of voice that seemed annoyed.
Hey, let me in.
I sat up in bed, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice came again.
Let me in.
I sat there for what felt like forever, then summoned some courage and climbed out of bed. My room felt cold as I walked towards my bedroom door. My hand shook as I reached for the doorknob. Was I really going to open my door? Yes, and when I did, the dummy was sitting right there on the floor in the hallway, staring at me with those big glass eyes. And its smile, it stretched even wider than before. I slammed my door shut and ran back into my bed, praying that that thing didn't come in after me. Very soon after, we all started to hear footsteps at night, like children's footsteps, pitter-patter throughout the house. My dad would check to see if we had a possible intruder, but there never was. Then the voices came, our voices. I would hear my dad calling me from the living room, and so I'd go to see what he wanted, and he wouldn't be there. The room would be empty except for that creepy dummy sitting there with that unsettling grin. Same went for my parents. They'd hear their names being called, and when they'd answer, no one was there. And the tension began to grow in our family. I mean, we had our normal fights like any other family, but this was getting to be too much. There was a darkness coming over us, and something had to be done. One night before bed, something must have happened because I saw my mom shoving the dummy into a storage chest we had in the living room. I heard her gasp the next morning, and when I came running to see what was happening, I saw it too. It was sitting almost defiantly on the couch, grinning at her. My dad took it and put it in the garage, saying, "We'll figure out what to do with this." Next day, it was back. The stress of seeing this thing continue to come back was becoming too much, not to mention the footsteps, the voices, and the cloud of impending doom that was coming over us. So one night, my dad took the damn thing and threw it in our garbage bin. The garbage truck came the next morning and picked up our garbage like normal. Soon after, my dad went to bring our garbage bin back inside, and sure enough, it was empty, like normal. What wasn't normal? The dummy. It was sitting inside, looking right at my dad and grinning. We couldn't take it anymore, so we decided to burn the thing. My dad took it to the fire pit and lit it up. We all stood watching as nothing happened. The fire curled around the dummy, but it didn't burn. The paint didn't bubble. The clothes didn't singe. The hair, it didn't melt. It sat in the fire as if it were enjoying the heat. This thing, it had to be demonic. Not even a saw or drill would penetrate it, so we came up with one last idea. I mean, we were desperate. We got to work immediately. No one spoke. We didn't even look at each other as we dug a deep hole in our backyard. And when we felt it was deep enough, we took the dummy and threw it in. Afterwards, we poured cement, filling the hole and burying the dummy for good. At least we hoped. It took some time for the cement to dry, and when it did, we were out of there. We moved as far as we could get from our house and that dummy, but I've got to tell you, even though years have passed since we've lived in that house, sometimes late at night, I'll hear the pitter-patter of small footsteps. My imagination, I'm guessing, or hoping. Anyway, I do wonder if that dummy is still buried there. And if it is, I wonder if it's just waiting for the next family to fall victim to it, or is it digging and trying to claw its way out of its concrete grave? Well, thank you for listening to these haunted doll stories. I truly hope you enjoyed them. If you didn't figure out which story was based on real accounts, that would be the story about the ventriloquist dummy found in the wall. Okay, so it's looking like it's time to say goodnight, but before we go, please remember to click the like and subscribe buttons for me if you haven't done so already, and prepare for more scary stories to come your way. So until next time, stay safe and stay scary.